Hello, this is Scott Williams. I'm the Membership Director for the League of American Bicyclists, and I'm your host for tonight's Club Leadership webinar on community relations and improving cyclist image in your community. Thanks for joining us. I have a great panel we put together tonight. The whole thing will kick off with Joel Hoback, president of the Shawnee Trail Cycling Club, and really the whole thing grew out of his idea for this webinar, which just goes to show if you have something you want to talk about, something you'd like to have us talk about, please contact me at scott@bikeleague.org and let me know, because a lot of it grows out of what our attendees know and what they're interested in talking about. And I'm really glad that he proposed this. It's a really cool panel, and he's got a lot of great things to share. Later we'll have Ryan Kragerud, the president of Bicycle Longmont, talking about their community cruiser rides, and Steve Alfred, the chair of the Bicycle Ambassadors for the town of Hilton Head Island Bicycle Advisory Committee, talking about, you guessed it, bicycle ambassadors. I am going to hand the screen over to Joel, and Joel, take it away.
Okay, can you hear me, Scott?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. My name is Joel Hoback. As Scott said, I head up Shawnee Trail Cycling Club here in Frisco, Texas. We're about 25 miles straight north of downtown Dallas. I also chair the Bicycle Advisory Committee here in Frisco. And we've been making a concerted effort over the past 3 or 4 years, particularly with our club, to improve community relations between the clubs and cyclists in general in our area. Just a little bit about Frisco. Like I said, we're about 25 miles north of downtown Dallas. We are, in Texas terms, a fairly small city, about 99 square miles, about 140,000 people. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Shawnee Trail Cycling Club. We're a nonprofit, 501c3, very focused on education, general promotion of cycling in the area. About 4 years old, and we're already one of the 5 largest clubs membership-wise in the DFW Metroplex. And when we talk about that, part of another little project I had going on earlier this year, I was a little amazed at size-wise and scale in DFW, and this comes to play with community relations as well. Dallas-Fort Worth metro area is about 9,000 square miles. And when you think about that, it's larger than the states of Rhode Island and Connecticut combined. You put that together with the region having one of the highest concentrations of cyclists in the country, and you can talk about coordination, community relations, the number of communities that are involved in this vast area, and it becomes a particular challenge. And we've had some great success in the past 3 or 4 years. I'll share a little bit of that with you. Focus for our club, the area, really involves about 20 major municipalities, including Dallas, everything from the size of Dallas to some of the little, you almost call them mom and pop towns, but towns that are anywhere from 150 to up to about 3,000 citizens. These are where our rides go through and where we're focused. I'll give you an idea of where we sit, a little more kind of setting the table. You can see where Frisco sits. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not on the screen, but Dallas is straight south of us, down the tollway. We've got lakes surrounding us. We're fortunate right now in that about a 20-30 minute bike ride, you're out in the country. So you're dealing with some of these small municipalities, but you're also interacting with them. So you find out when you're on the bike, every time you step into a community, you are an ambassador of sorts to them. We try to focus, at least from the Shawnee Trail side, on communities that are north of us, west of us, and maybe just slightly south. There's enough of a presence from other cycling clubs and organizations to the east and to the southeast of us that we try to stay out of their way. Talk a little bit more about that as we get going. But as you can see, it's a pretty vast area and pretty big challenge. You're talking about laying out a plan for establishing good community relations. Something we have trouble getting across to other organizations and people is you have community relations regardless, but you want to make them good. First thing you need to do is establish a goal. You can't do anything with anything without working to a goal. For the Shawnee Trail Cycling Club, what we wanted to do, and it's kind of a two-pronged thing, we wanted to become the ones in those communities that we targeted, and for organizations within those communities, we wanted to be the ones that they come to and call on when help's needed. And it doesn't mean one of the things you didn't want to be is be one of those organizations that you see across the country that are seen rushing to save the day for cyclists when there's an issue. That you go into especially some of these smaller communities, they're looking for friends, they're looking for partners. They're not looking for someone to come in and tout how good they are, tout what kind of relations they can do for that moment. They want to be somebody that they can talk to on a day-to-day basis. They feel comfortable picking up the phone and talking to. Not somebody just coming in last minute. And we've had a tremendous amount of success with this. Develop these relationships, establish relationships. Look at where your membership is. Focus on the communities where you have a presence. Look at if you have members in a particular community, even if it's only 3 or 4. Draw those people in. Use them to be your focus on the community. But look at your membership. Determine where you can make a difference. You can't go out to every community that you have rides in, every community that you'd like to, do everything at once and be successful. You have to have a focus, and you have to start somewhere. So pick the 2 or 3, maybe 4 communities where you really can make a difference for cycling, where you can improve the relationship there, and focus on that. Don't just look at your home base. For example, we are based out of Frisco. Don't just focus on that one city. Unless you have your groups doing rides, events, and that focus the relationship just on that one community. Look at everywhere you take a bike and see what you can do. Not just where your rides start. Where do your rides go? If you're riding through a community, who could you be affecting? What sports venues? What pedestrians are you affecting? Are there a lot of runners there? What about the people in motor vehicles? It is they share the road, not cyclists or motor vehicles taking the road. And what can you do to promote cycling in those communities and draw them in and share some mutual goals? What you don't want to do, I mentioned this a little earlier because we don't generally go south and east of us too much. If there's already a strong presence there from another club, another advocacy organization, let them do their job. It's not a competition to show how good you are, how important you are. It's about building relationships for cycling and improving and progressing cycling in those areas. If you go in and try to establish your own relationships where there's already a large club or somebody's got strong relationships, you're going to get in the way of getting things done. And you'll likely harm the reputation of the cycling community as a whole, both for your organization and theirs. So take advantage of what's there, establish relationships with those communities and those clubs, and work through them, work with them. Make sure you have a positive effect, minimize any negatives that are going on, and promote, be an ambassador for cycling. Needless to say, it is about giving when you're talking about community relations. The getting, that's going to come. Whatever your goals are to get out of these communities, if you've established a good relationship with them, your giving of your time, your club's resources, money, whatever it is you're putting into this, there's going to be great return on that. Make this about the community, not you or your club. Look at things from the community's perspective. And just a second on this, because we establish relationships tops to bottom in the communities. It's not just the mayor, it's not just the council, it's not just a single representative off the Parks Board, it's top to bottom. A lot of these people are employees of the city that you work with. You want to make sure to understand the pressures and the priorities they go through so that any kind of goals you've got, you can meld in with whatever they are. So you want to be able to, as you do with anything else in professional life, you want to be able to make them successful in their endeavors. And believe me, it'll make them your friends for life. You know, that may be cutting costs, that may be building roads. You know, I know in this area we're growing by leaps and bounds, so they've been tasked with building roads, keeping transportation going. Work with them, become their friend, become their partner, and build cycling into that. Now we've taken a multi-pronged approach with all the communities that we're working with. That means not just a single person in the city, but we're dealing with parks and rec departments. We have friends on the council. We deal with the mayors of each one of these cities. Fire departments, streets departments are so important, especially when they're building out new streets or reconstructing old. And the schools. We've had a tremendous amount of success, not so much going directly with the schools as a club, but working through the PTAs and those organizations that already have a relationship with the schools. That's where we do a lot of our bike rodeos and our education from the club. And one thing that gets its own line item that I can't emphasize enough is establishing good relationships and partnering with local law enforcement. And however you define that. I had someone tell me a couple of years ago, we're working on getting some ordinances passed in one of the cities here, and they said, you know, you can't depend on getting law enforcement support. You get the ordinances passed, they'll follow. Well, I can't disagree with that more. If you can bring local law enforcement on, get them to support whatever ordinance you're trying to get in, and get their understanding. A lot of times they'll bring you around to their side of you, so it's not always, sometimes it truly is a partnership. So, and we've been very successful. Police chiefs, officers, traffic officers, their education departments, working with them to do education efforts for cyclists and motorists, and you know, lot of success there. Just a quick, you know, it's a quick presentation. We've only got 10 or 15 minutes, but talking about working with several municipalities at once, and this may seem like a small thing to some people, but it's been a big success for us. We had two cities here in North Texas, Frisco, and a city called The Colony, right south of us, that the only connections that we currently got are two very heavily trafficked roads. We've been able to, because of our relationships, get those two cities together and work to get a bike path, and this is under construction at the moment. It actually connects the two cities. If you look right north of the street that's on display there is actually a subdivision being built there now, one along the red dotted line, and a couple of others that will be attending this school that's at the end of the bottom red line. So they are building the bike path out. It's an 8-foot bike path that's going to connect the two cities. It's going to be a big deal for us. Get the kids back and forth to school, but also we'll take cyclists out of West Frisco, the Colony, and establish a connection down to the Colony to restaurants, businesses there, and with another road that's going to be completed around the first of the year, is going to give a commute path for both of those cities down to the cities of Plano and Dallas, something they don't have today. The only way they've got to get there is along these heavily trafficked roads, and during rush hour it's very dangerous. So, you know, this is something we've been able to successfully work with these cities. As I mentioned earlier, if you've got members of your clubs, organizations that are residents of the community, get them involved. Of course, you want the leadership in the club to play a key role, but communities are much more willing to listen to their constituents, their residents, than they are to you. So get them involved, push them out to the front. You know, it gives them some kudos as well and gets more people involved in your club. If you have a state organization, you know, it's always a hierarchical approach. We happen to have Bike Texas here, a very strong organization at the state level. You know, one of the things that we can do with them is they have resources that we can call on that we haven't generated here locally. Access to grants from the Department of Transportation, safe routes to school, grants to build parkways, to build bike paths. They also are our main conduit to the state legislature. And they have legal staff We have legal people on staff that we can call on if we need it, things that we just don't have. And, they're willing to help us out at a moment's notice. So if you have a state organization, be sure to draw them in. And along with that, as a connection, make sure you reference League of American Bicyclists. Both of these, between the state organization and the league, if you're in and you're talking something contentious to your local community, if you position the league and hierarchy to the state level as that next level, if you run into a roadblock, it's not the end of the road, right? You can call on Bike Texas. We can call on them to come in and bring their experts in, continue the conversation, make other suggestions. The other thing that you want to make sure of between the state organization, the league, and yourself is that your strategies for community involvement are consistent. And if you can demonstrate national to local strategies, it really adds a lot of credibility to both you and those other organizations going into the cities. The other thing that's real important, your club sponsors. They're sponsoring you, providing you with financial resources and their time for a reason, because they believe in you. Your sponsors may have contacts or insight when it comes to local community issues that you may not even realize. So make sure you draw your sponsors in, keep them apprised of what you're doing, and take them with you to the city if necessary. Always be proactive. Stick to your objective. Again, be the ones that the community organizations call when help's needed. Anything cycling, from something very minor to something very major. Meet regularly. Now, don't just go to them when there's a problem. The best meetings that we've had with some of our communities, we make sure that we meet with them on a regularly scheduled basis, is sitting down when there's no problem to discuss. Being able to spend some personal time building relationships with the people that you're there with. Much more apt to get them to call you. Use your club resources. Hold events there, whether it's bike rodeos, building rides, educational events, start rides. One of the things we've done here locally in our club, 3 of the cities that we deal with, Frisco, the Colony, Little Elm, we have a novice ride that occurs once a week, and we rotate the start of that ride between the cities. It was the easiest one to make mobile, and showing them that you're taking an interest in their city, not just riding through, really goes a long way to building relationships. In Frisco, they came to us. We're a road bike club primarily. They wanted to build a mountain bike trail. We organized and directed the construction of a mountain bike trail here, which opened up right at a year ago. That has got us so many friends here in the city, top to bottom. We donated some bike racks. I'll show you a picture of that. We, with some of our club resources, club funds, at the end of last year, we donated some bike racks that are going to be installed in front of City Hall in Frisco for people visiting the City Hall and our library there. And when you get the chance, meet with citizens. Draw those communities into your events. Anything you can do to draw them in. We had a safety fair. Draw the police departments in. Draw the parks department. Let the people talk about the streets. What we found about the streets people here in Frisco and in the Colony, doing some fantastic things specifically for cyclists, but they don't talk about it. Put them on the podium. Let them do it. I always use social media. To kind of close out my little section of this, just a few pictures. We do 3 events, 3 Take a Kid mountain biking events a year at the Frisco Trail that we open. Education for the adults as well. It's been very successful. We've had, even with some inclement weather, have had great turnouts with this, and the kids just love it. And it transfers over to road cycling as well. The logo that you see here for the novice ride, Frisco, the Colony, and Little Elm, little triangle of that. We're getting ready to draw a couple of more cities into that rotation at their request. Education. Actually get to see me sitting with the, or standing with the police chief in Prosper. He came to us and wanted to put on a bike rodeo. He's an avid cyclist, but had no idea how to organize it. So we went and organized with him. Very successful turnout. I had to add one of the other pictures from that. This little boy that's up in the right-hand corner. Probably the cutest boy I've ever had at any one of my bike rodeos. Had his little tricycle there, and he was just so proud of himself for going out and doing the course. The bottom right, that is our mayor of Frisco. I once a month do a beginning road riding, group riding class, and he attended our class as part of a safety fair in July. And we've had, because of some accidents earlier in the year, we were approached by the police department in Frisco and the Colony, and we kind of tags off the Ride Smart campaign from League of American Bicyclists. We had a lot of people in those accidents that were on roads that they shouldn't have been on. And through the police department, fire department, we're able to get the word out. Proclamations. In May, we had 3 cities one night. We had to divide our board up. Did proclamations for Bike Month down to the local level. Presented us with proclamations not only recognizing the club, but it gave us a chance to give the city some recognition. See in the bottom right-hand side where we donated the bike racks to the city council? You know, anything you can do for your cities, anything you can do to help them is well received. Outside of the cities, some of the businesses, top right-hand side, I had to throw that in. One of the smaller cities that we ride through is Aubrey, northwest of us. Fantastic little restaurant here. We gave them a plug. Best breakfast you'll ever have going through one of these small towns. But posted on their Facebook page, got them on our Twitter. Give them some recognition for being good partners for us on our rides. I know I kind of rushed through a lot of that to make up my time. So Scott, I will turn that back over to you.
Thank you so much, Joel. I think we're going to move, well, let me just pause here and say that if you want to ask a question, look for a little question panel. If you don't have a big long dashboard open on your screen, look for a little tiny gray thing, maybe in the upper right-hand corner of your screen with a red arrow on it. You click that red arrow, it expands out a larger dashboard, and there's a place there you can type your questions in. Then I can put them to all the panelists at the end of the presentation, or if you have other commentary you want to share. Our panelists have great information, but attendees often have a lot of great insights too. And now, Ryan, we are moving north to Colorado and Bicycle Longmont and what you've done for your club and the community with your community rides there. Ryan, I think you may have yourself muted there. I see your slide, but I don't hear you yet.
Okay, how's that?
Great.
Okay, let me do one thing quick. Okay, so yeah, like we were just talking about, Longmont is in Colorado. We are 40 miles north of Denver, and we are also 10 miles northeast of Boulder. And that basically puts us on an area we call the Front Range. And Longmont, let's see. Okay, so this whole presentation basically is centered around the idea of, you know, the simplest question that we ask each other, or if you remember back to when you were a kid and you'd call up a friend and say, hey, let's go ride bikes. And we basically boiled down all of the different genres of cycling in Longmont to that one phrase, let's ride bikes. And basically the subtitle here is how a social ride changed the image and course of cycling in Longmont. That might sound a little self-important, but it's pretty true, as we'll get into here in a second. So about me, most of this presentation is about a cruiser ride that I started in 2004 that's continuing on to the present. Bike night goes between basically mid-May until end of September. I have a graduate degree in urban planning and historic preservation. I'm a urban planner by trade with the American Institute of Certified Planners. And I've done a number of different types of planning jobs throughout my career. And a little bit about Longmont. This is probably more exciting. So Longmont is right now is a silver level community with bicycle-friendly communities. We were bronze in, actually that was 2004, that date's incorrect. Then we were elevated to silver in 2012. Longmont is about 86,000 people. We have about 154 miles of bike lanes, trails, and sharrows. So we've got quite a bit of bike stuff here. And a lot of times I find our board sitting around and complaining that there isn't enough. And then we're quick to point out how entitled that argument is when we know that there are communities, much like the town I grew up in Minnesota, that doesn't have any. So we're fortunate that we're able to say that we have 154 miles here. Approximately 10 to 15% of that was destroyed in our recent floods that have made the news across the country and so forth. So we're entering an interesting period where we're going to cut our teeth on reimagining what biking means in Longmont and maybe making some improvements and then at least getting back what we've lost. So half the population here lives and works in Longmont, and we have an average household income of $81,000. Our family size here is 3, so it's smaller than what the national average is. Our average age is 36, and 41% of us have a bachelor's degree or higher, and 3%, about 3,000 folks, are using their bikes to get to work, according to the census. And this last one is we are not a college town or a tourist destination. We're working to become a tourist destination, but we're not a tourist destination. And I will revisit that line here later in this presentation. So a little bit about Bike Night. Bike Night started, as I mentioned, in 2004 as a family-friendly cruiser ride through our historic neighborhoods here in Longmont. The purpose, essentially, with Bike Night was only, basically to get people out of their houses, put down the TV remote, get on your bike, come on out and have some fun. And you can see from the pictures there, 2004, it was basically our dog, my wife, Andrea, and myself going to the Dairy Queen. And we noticed that as we were riding through the neighborhoods, people would stop and wave and smile and so forth. And I put up a bunch of posters. This is pre-Facebook, so I put up a bunch of posters and sent out an email once in a while to folks and got them to join us. And so by 2008, Bike Night was growing, and so the picture in the middle basically shows the group, or the Bike Night group, reaching about, I can see about 18 people there. That was kind of average then. And now this one, the picture on the right is 2012, and also here in 2013, we reach an average Wednesday night ride of about 125 to 130 is our average for every single Wednesday night during the summer between May and September, with the highest nights reaching upwards to 230 to 240 people on a given Wednesday night here in Longmont. Again, going back to that no college, we don't have a college, so these are all young families, families with kids learning how to ride on streets, as well as seniors and baby boomers looking to get back into cycling and wanting to learn how to get around the community. As Bike Night grew, I periodically asked Bicycle Longmont to join the ride, and their response generally was no. And I'm going to talk a little bit about misconceptions or misperceptions of what each group is about, because at this time, Bicycle Longmont and Bike Night were on parallel paths, but we were never really crossed. And part of it was people on Bike Night generally thought Bicycle Longmont folks were elitists and they were against us, etc. The question then was, well, was this valid? Yes or no? And at the time, if you would have asked regulars on the cruiser ride, it would have probably been, yeah, that's valid. Later we figured out that it was not valid. And let's see. Then, so at the same time, Bicycle Longmont was doing its thing. Bicycle Longmont started in 2000 and until 2010, and 2010 is an important year, but the purpose of Bicycle Longmont was to be the watchdog, watching the city of Longmont's Public Works Department, helping to bird dog projects, helping to get bike stuff incorporated into new projects. They were actively promoting and advocating for, and they also implied the 5 E's of bicycle-friendly communities: engineering, encouragement, enforcement, education, and evaluation. This is diametrically different than what we were doing at Bike Night at the time, although education and encouragement did fall into the Bike Night piece. The deciders, your elected officials and so forth, perceive Bicycle Longmont as doing well, as their representative of the bike culture in Longmont. Avid cyclists' perceptions were basically that Bicycle Longmont was doing a good job. The average rider or weekend warrior basically thought Bicycle Longmont was lycra-clad elitists. And that was mostly because Bicycle Longmont catered primarily to the road folks, and not so much the weekend warriors or your average rider looking to jump on their Next or something from Walmart, or as hand-me-down, secondhand Raleigh or something like that. So this misperception was honestly due to lack of community outreach. Bicycle Longmont was very good at working with elected officials and city officials and people in decision-making roles, but there was very little outreach to the community in general. So there became a disconnect between the community and Bicycle Longmont versus Bicycle Longmont and the city of Longmont and so forth. The only outreach that was really done were by the instructors who were leading bicycle rodeos in the community. And even then, parents would show up with their kids, and oftentimes they left with the idea that it's good to ride bikes, but you're riding your bike wrong. And it was education that came from a negative place, as opposed to encouraging folks to get on their bikes and ride more often and to be aware of different things. It was more, you're doing it wrong, so listen to me because I do it right, kind of a message. And it wasn't getting through to a lot of people. In 2009, Bicycle Longmont's memberships started falling off. They had fewer volunteers. The capacity was really declining, and the energy was lacking on the board. At the same time, there was a perceived that Bike Night was a mob of the unwashed, and so was this valid? There's a lot of perceptions here, and this is just kind of painting the picture about how different the two organizations here in our small town are. And the next slide, of course. So basically, just to kind of let you know, it all comes together. So generally, Bicycle Longmont saw Bike Night as a lesser ride. The Bike Night was encouraging people, or encouraging untrained riders to ride, and didn't encourage safe bicycling or encourage others to be trained in how to operate a bicycle. Essentially, we were scofflaws, and that was basically because we didn't always stop for stop signs, and some of the rules of the road we didn't follow, and so forth. But then Bicycle Longmont got a new president, Anthony Cyclists, who was riding the cruiser ride, and basically what he did was reached out to me as the leader of Bike Night and said, hey, I think that you guys are doing a great thing. You're getting a lot of people energized about biking. Have you ever thought about joining Bicycle Longmont? And we sat down and talked about all these misperceptions between our two organizations and realized that these were just perceptions that have been based on half-truths and hearsay situations. And basically because he reached out and expressed an interest, we started bringing the two organizations together. And so I really credit Anthony with with bringing Bike Night and Bicycle Longmont together. So since 2010, when we brought these two together, we've created a new perception of both organizations. I think legitimacy came out of it, so it legitimized both Bicycle Longmont and Bike Night. And together we've been redefining cycling in Longmont since 2010. So even though Bike Longmont is about 13 years old and Bike Night is about 10 years old, really, because we came together in 2010, we're like a brand new organization. And as I say here, awesomeness has ensued. So what we found since merging our social rides into Bike Longmont, we get more people on bikes. So what does that mean? We're using a metric basically on interactions, or I guess in marketing they also call it touches. Our rider interactions in 2010 we're at about 2,400. 1,200 of that was bike valet, that we were parking bikes, and then which was also the first year that we started bike valet. And then the balance of that were people attending bike night. And then here in 2013 we hit 10,000 interactions. So basically we had interacted with 10,000 cyclists in a community of 86,000 people. And so that is, to us, just amazing. And there is some double counting in that. These are all cumulative totals. Our idea in 2010 was to create something that we wanted to overwhelm the existing bike system so that it would make it easier for us to ask for more stuff. So essentially what we're doing is we're using Bike Night to create a base, or at least to energize our base and create a base to get more bike stuff in Longmont. So we basically use Bike Night to what we call create authentic and organic bike experiences, where basically say you come to the Bike Night ride, you have a good time, you come back again, and then your third time you maybe have talked with some coworkers or your neighbors, and then they show up, and then they start selling it to their friends. And so it just keeps growing from this grassroots, and it's just been an electric experience. We also have, what I also think is for social rides and cruiser rides, we also have the lowest cost of entry for any kind of ride that there is. It's basically, fancy bikes are not required. It's basically ride what you own, ride what you can borrow, or ride even what you can get at the local pawn shop or at Target or Walmart. We basically are catering to every person in Longmont and trying to get them on their bikes so that they'll get out and talk to their friends. So in turn, what we've done is we've taken that concept of the interested but concerned, and we've turned that into the interested and motivated. Oh, yeah, good deal. So here we have an infographic. So we start here. Hopefully you can see my cursor and the interested arrow. This is where people come to Bike Night. They get interested in riding their bike around our historic areas. We encourage them to come back the next week. We encourage them, I think my saying is usually, tell a friend or bring a friend and tell a stranger about it. And so they get encouraged, they bring their friends and so forth. Over the course of the summer, they get comfortable riding their bikes around town. We start linking up different destinations throughout Longmont, from our where we start the cruiser ride in our historic downtown, out to the farmers market, out to different areas of Longmont. They get comfortable riding on the streets. We do not allow anybody to ride on sidewalks. We do not allow anyone to cross the yellow line in the center of the street. I also sit down and pull all the kids aside, and we do bike safety at every single Wednesday ride and so forth. But all of this together gets families confident. It gets people riding their bikes on their own. And what we see after they get confident is that they're now motivated. They get out there, they start showing up at other bicycle Longmont rides, our novice rides, and we've had people graduate into our quote-unquote advanced rides, which are long road rides and so forth. Boulder County is known for its road riding and so forth. So they're motivated, and we begin to see them showing up at grocery stores, at dinners, at school. They begin to ride their bike to work. They go to community events. We provide bike valet or bike parking at all of Longmont's community events, as well as the farmers market. And it's the best thing to see somebody who has started riding their bike at Bike Night elevate themselves to going to community events by their bike, and then farmers market and so forth. I think it's just amazing. So we get people interested in Bike Night. We encourage, it's encouraging at Bike Night because it's free, fun, and it's family friendly. We help them to build confidence. They get comfortable, motivated, and they really enjoy riding their bikes. So kind of moving on to the next thing. Our motto for Bicycle Longmont, or our vision, is we want more people riding bicycles more often. And so we do that. Our board, as was mentioned earlier by Joel, we sat down and created a goal for ourselves, and that was to get more people riding bikes more often. And so we started measuring everything. But in order to do that, we needed to raise some money. So we have a cruiser Goodnight ride, our cruiser ride that's our major fundraiser, and that's the Goodnight ride. The first year, we expected 200 people to show up based on who was showing up at our bike nights at that time. What happened was 1,200 people showed up to our very first event. The second year, it doubled to 2,300. And then in our third year, this year, it was 2,900. We have various routes. The cost of admission is very reasonable. We find that predominantly women are buying the family a night out, and it's always on Father's Day weekend. So we don't know if maybe the ladies are getting back at their husbands for choosing to go golfing on Mother's Day, but the women are buying the tickets for the night ride on Father's Day, which means women like bands, beers, and bikes, I guess. So we find that folks who take part in our events, the night ride specifically, have a higher household income. And this is just a little bit higher than our average for Longmont, which is $81,000. And so here it shows you what we've raised. Not everything that's awesome is always awesome. So in our second year, we actually lost money, but then this year we came back. So I'm going to try and speed up here because I just see my 15 minutes has moved on. So just to kind of show you how we've grown, these different charts here, this is the cumulative total of riders in bike nights. So it shows you from 2004 till 2013 at the top. So at 2010, the blue line right here is where the two came together, and then everything just took off. And the next few charts show the exact same thing. So this is our bike valet, providing bike parking at the different events and farmers market. You see how everything is just taken off. And then we have a social meetup ride, which is on meetup.com. And this website we've sponsored for the last few years. These meetup groups are excellent at getting baby boomers out on their bikes because a lot of the rides take place during the day and during the week. So retired folks find these a great way to get some exercise and so forth. And these have just taken off as well. Again, we're talking rider interactions. So this is the cumulative total of rider interactions in a given season. And so this goes back to 2008. Before our two organizations were together, we were about the same. And then it just took off once we brought everything together. With Social Security, it's kind of a chuckle. This basically shows how our budget has taken off. And Bicycle Longmont is a 100% volunteer 501c3 organization. This picture shows one of our bike nights this last year. We require that all the kids are in the bike lane or in the bike lane to the right, so in the parking lane, and we use low-volume residential neighborhood streets primarily, and people generally follow the rules of the road, except sometimes we're not stopping at stop signs, but we generally try to stay to the right of the center line at any given time. And with 200 people, it gets kind of difficult to fit them all on the right side of the road. So who are the folks that are on these different entities of ours? Well, the interesting thing to show is that Bike Night gets women on bikes. 63% of the people who like us on Facebook are women. And then down here at the Goodnight Ride, which is bands, beers, and bikes, 54% are women who are fans of our page. And these percentages translate over to the rides themselves. I can almost guarantee it 100%. When you get down to Bicycle Longmont is your average run-of-the-mill advocacy organization, kind of spearheading everything, and we get a more even split between the sexes or the genders. But what I think is interesting is that it's really evenly split. Other advocacy organizations are really skewed towards men. So taking a look at cruiser rides along the Front Range, Bike Night, I said, started 10 years ago. Pueblo Cruiser Ride down in our south end of the Front Range just started 3 years ago. And they have a pretty even split of gender on their rides. But Patty had been telling me that they're getting more women on the rides and their numbers are starting to grow. The Denver Cruiser Ride, this group brings about 3,000 to 4,000 people every Wednesday night in Denver. And what you see here is that while it's evenly split, it's still skewed in terms of their followers on Facebook, females. So women are really like getting on into cruisers and doing these social rides. I think because it's safe, it's comfortable, and it's a lot of fun and so forth. So here's my slide on revisiting that university piece. We did it all without a residential university or having tourism generally. And what's the meaning? Well, basically what we're saying in Longmont is if we can do it, anybody can do it. Because we've noticed on the bicycle-friendly communities and all the press and so forth seems to revolve around college towns, and there isn't a lot of vocal folks from communities that don't have universities or tourism who are just trying to get regular mom and dad and other retired folks in their community on bikes. And so we're having a lot of success here in Longmont, and what we want everybody to take away is that you can do this too. So this is something I was going to get into, but it's basically it shows the timeline of the two groups as they came together, and then in 2011, here where everything comes together, you see how the interactions took off, the numbers of bikes parked, and all the things that we were offering took off as well. So these are some links, and that pretty much wraps up what I have to say.
Okay, great. Ryan, I have a couple of questions, and then we're going to move on to the presentation about biking ambassadors. One question is just about your routes. Has it always been the same ride? Has it evolved over time? Do you mix it up week to week? How do you roll?
Okay, so as I mentioned, and one of the things that I've learned, I went to the American Professionals of Biking and Walking that was here in Boulder. The thing that they impressed with me was count everything. So we count everything on bike night. How that ties into our routes. Over 10 years, we find out which routes people like, and so we rotate the highest vote getters, if you will, by attendance. And so we change it up every now and again, but we do stick primarily to a route that we called our West Old Town route. And the reason we stick to that route most often is because the neighbors along the streets have gotten used to us riding those streets, and now they come out with cowbells and bubble machines and noisemakers, and it really adds a festive kind of thing. So yeah, it's a little bit of both, but mainly we have our west side route that we do the most, but we do switch it up once in a while.
And is that something that's announced ahead of time? Do people come out based on the route?
Yes. So we are very loud, I would say. We have a number of Facebook entities or channels, I guess I call it, Facebook channels, that we make everything known on. Before we would send the same thing across Bicycle Longmont's Facebook page, Bike Night Facebook page, and the Goodnight Ride and so forth, and then we heard from folks saying, can you just have one page for Bike Night and stuff like that? So we send out it in advance to on Facebook primarily, and then I also have my blog that I started a long time ago, which is is it there?
LongmontBikeNight.blogspot.com, I'm guessing?
Yes, that's the one. Yes.
Excellent. Another person wanted to know if you're using the League's insurance program for your rides.
So, yes, we are to a certain extent. And that's actually that's actually the one thing that brought the two together. Anthony was savvy enough to say, how do you do insurance for your ride now that you have like 100 people a night or what have you? And I said, I don't. I just hope nobody gets hurt. And he said, well, what happens if you get sued and you lose your house? And I thought, well, that's a pretty good reason for joining up. But in terms of insurance, we use our club insurance and the League's insurance. The sticky wicket is making sure everybody can sign a waiver and stuff like that. And honestly, it gets to be quite a bit. So for Bike Night, we don't have a waiver that people sign. So essentially, it's ride at your own risk. For all of our meetup rides, they do waivers and so forth because the crowds are around. 8 to 12, and it doesn't take a long time to get the waiver signed.
And then one.
For our, just one last thing. But for our Goodnight Ride, where we get 3,000 people, that is an actual event, so we take out special event insurance on top of our league insurance.
All right. Well, one comment. Andy Fry says this Longmont talk is awesome, and I can see definite parallels to my community. So on that note, yes, thank you, Andy. I'm going to turn the screen over to Steve Alford, waiting patiently in Hilton Head Island. Steve?
Okay. I am ready to go here.
Okay.
I am Steve Alford, as mentioned. I'm in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. We are, unlike the others, a tourist area. We are essentially a resort and retirement community with about 38,000 year-round residents and 2.3 million annual visitors. We have over 100 miles of multi-use pathways and more than 20,000 rental bikes available at over 24 bike rental companies. So as a result, having 100 miles of bike paths on an island that's only 12 miles long and 5 miles wide means we have, relatively speaking, a lot of bike paths. And as a consequence, while golf courses and beaches are the major tourist attractions, biking is rapidly becoming a very big draw. Now, we became a bicycle-friendly community in May 2011, just 2.5 years ago, at the silver level. And in connection with that, our town formed a bicycle advisory committee, and the advisory committee in turn organized an ambassador program. Now there's a map of Hilton Head Island. The bottom part is the Atlantic Ocean. We have water obviously all the way around us, and lots of paths, including more than what shows up here. There are lots of ambassador programs around. There's screen lists, a few of them that show up if you go on the web. Chicago has had one for 12 years. They are fortunate that they are funded both by the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. Philadelphia has an extensive program and has had one for a while with 4 full-time staff members. Similarly, Minneapolis has 4 full-timers to promote their program. We, on the other hand, have a little different approach, which is basically determined by the fact that we have a lot of tourists that are coming here. So our basic objective is to promote a welcoming environment and a safe experience. So we provide directions, maps, safety tips, limited first aid, and mechanical assistance as needed. We are not, for one thing, in the business of trying to promote more people on the bike paths. We have a lot as it is. Each of our volunteer ambassadors has a yellow neon vest with the designation HHI Biking Ambassadors in small print on the front and in very large print on the back, along with a name tag with first names. That's yours truly on the left of the picture. We provide maps and routes for both casual and serious riders. Most of our tourists are casual riders, but we do have some that come down are very, very serious riders. We have flyers with safety tips. This is what we hand out to anybody that we greet. And there's a couple of particular aspects about it. One is it's very simple. It's very visual in its impact. What we have found essentially is if we hand out a typed list of do's and don'ts for bike riders, if they read it, that would be a major accomplishment. More likely, even that doesn't happen. So we want to get something that's can be quickly grasped and quickly understood. We have a number of points there. The first one is the wearing a helmet, especially children. We are aware of the reports that show in a number of cities around the world that if you try to push adults to wear helmets, they may not want to ride their bikes. So while we encourage it, we don't push it. We do push it for children, which we think is a little easier to sell, and that is in turn aided by the fact that a lot of the bike rental companies make their helmets available for kids for free. The last item at the bottom of the sheet we think is also quite important, which is making eye contact. A few years ago, we looked back at our statistics for collisions involving bikes and cars. And we went out to take a look at 7 or 8 locations around the community that had the highest number of bike automobile interactions, unfortunate interactions. And we found that 80% of those incidents involved virtually the same fact pattern. That is, cars on side streets coming into a major street with or without a traffic signal, or driveways or exits from gas stations, for example. The motorist pulls up, stops, plans to make a right turn. So where's the driver looking? To the left. On the right is this bicyclist coming along on the bike path who may have the right of way because he's got a green light and rides in front of the car that starts up. So we think it's very important for cyclists to make sure they make eye contact with the motorists. In addition to the flyers with safety tips, we also do first aid supplies in a red fanny pack that we provide all the volunteers. That red fanny pack was supplied to us by our local fire and rescue squad. And finally, we give out to each of our volunteer ambassadors key phone numbers for the bike shops, particularly the rental shops, list of emergency numbers, non-emergency numbers as well, and the town maintenance department for problems on the bike path. Training. All of our volunteers.
Steve, if I could just jump in.
Scott, you want to put up the other document here?
Do you want me to switch over and show the documents that you...
Yeah, why don't you switch over and put the documents up.
Okay, the next time you get that message that comes up asking you about your color settings, the bottom link, I think, will make that stop happening, and it won't come up anymore. So if that comes up while we're looking at these other things, you can...
all of our volunteers are required to participate in a 2-hour training session, which we hold at the local sheriff's office to add authenticity. I agree with the comment that Joel made at the beginning of the session that it's important to have good relations and involve your law enforcement people, and we do that through the sheriff's office. And as an aside, like many southern states, police powers reside in the county sheriff's office rather than in a municipal police department. The principal topic, which takes up 1 hour out of our 2-hour training sessions, is bicycle safety. And we are fortunate that we have an LAB certified instructor, and she does a superb job in taking all of the volunteers through the important aspects of how to be a safe bicycle rider. We are concerned that our volunteer ambassadors be safe, but we also want them in a position where they can pass that information along to the people that they make contact with. The next item we have is the primer. Good. here we're talking about what it is that we want our volunteer ambassadors to do. What are their objectives? And you can see them coming along on the top here. And how do they make contact with the volunteers, under what circumstances, and what is their demeanor, and how do they carry through on the personal contacts they make with people. And the next one, Scott, is first aid. We have volunteers who, as you can imagine, they're not nurses, they're not medical people, but we do want them to be in a position where if they come across a situation where a bicyclist has fallen off his bike or run into a tree or otherwise hurt himself, that they can at least be of some assistance. We, in cooperation with our local fire and rescue squad, took a Red Cross first aid pamphlet and rewrote it for use in connection with bicycling, and we put that pamphlet in their red fanny pack that they carry with them. What you see on the screen now are the kinds of things that we talk about in the training session, and we do try to deal with the things that they are most likely to run into, which is how to stop bleeding. What if somebody has a sprain or a fracture, they fell off the bike and hit their head. And down south where we are, where it's frequently in the 90s, dealing with heat-related problems. And then we also showed them a CPR video. We hope that nobody ever has to use it, but the fact is, if you look at a CPR video, you can probably be in a position to help somebody who really needs it, because all that's required today is chest compressions at 100 a minute. It's not necessary to do mouth to mouth. Okay, Scott, switch me back if you would, and we'll talk about the things that we focus on. They fall into three categories. The summer visitor season, which is essentially the beginning of June to the middle of August. As this was our first year, we concentrated on Sundays, and the reason for that is that Saturday is the day that tourists arrive and depart, so Sunday is their first day of vacation. We work on Sunday mornings from 9 to 1 in 2-hour shifts, and we picked the mornings because we find that most of the people on vacation here end up at the beach or around the pool in the afternoon when it's a little warmer. We picked out 3 designated areas that from our observation had the largest number of cyclists, and we have our ambassadors patrolling that area. What do you want me to hit here, Scott? Don't show this message again.
Current color scheme, yes.
Yeah. The second category are large spectator events, such as the PGA golf tournament at the famed Harbortown Golf Course, which is held every April, and which those of you who are golf aficionados may have seen on TV. This year we encourage people coming to the golf course at Harbortown to ride their bikes. So we had ambassadors helping out at that event. The third category, volunteers' choice, or as I call them, freelancers. These are people who don't want to, they want to help out, but they don't want to do it at a particular time or a particular place. So we're happy to have them wear their yellow vests and carry their information kits whenever they go out riding. So they're doing it at their own time in their own places, and that gives us a little coverage in a different way. And that's what happens at this point of the year when we're beyond the tourist season. Funding. Unlike some of the big cities, we don't have any governmental budget or funding that we can use. So for the things that we needed, we went out and found some sponsors. Our vests were donated by a local company, Transportation Safety Apparel, that engages in the nationwide sale of similar type vests to major airlines, fire departments, and so forth. So we were very fortunate that they were here and willing to help. The first aid kits and the instructions were provided by the town Fire and Rescue Division, and the flyers and meeting space were offered by the County Sheriff's Office. We talked a little bit earlier about life insurance. We did take out insurance through the organizations that's affiliated with the League of American Bicyclists. And that's the only thing that we had to come up with on our own, so it was ended up being paid for by volunteer leadership. Finally, we were very fortunate in the public relations category to have our local newspaper, the Island Packet, do a lengthy and very supportive story about our activities as ambassadors over the summer. If there are any of the documents that you saw on your screen earlier that you think you might like to get copies of, let me know or let Scott know, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you very much.
Well, you know, looking at that final slide that you had there about your funding and the fact that you don't actually have dedicated funding, says to me that I think that Ryan summarized it actually pretty well for everyone, in that if we can do it, then you can do it too. Everything here was done on a very low budget, but a lot of intention and, you know, having a goal and setting out to it and doing it with willpower, more so than any sort of big funding. I did have one other specific question, is just whether anybody in their outreach and community relations efforts had approached the problem of getting people not to use earbuds when they're biking. And he'd like to know how that went, but he took that on.
Yeah, this is Joel. The way our club approaches it, we've got our own set of rules, very small set of rules, and we just don't allow it. People don't ride with us if they've got earbuds in, not in a group.
But you haven't done anything more broadly in terms of, I think that question probably arose, Steve, from your safety brochure.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Well, our ambassadors in Hilton Head they're not enforcement people, and partly that's because we're a tourist area and we want the people that we meet with to come back next year, and partly because we don't have any law enforcement powers anywhere. But if we saw somebody wearing earphones, our ambassadors should be suggesting to them that they're courting disaster doing that.
all right, well, I think that's all the questions we have. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your time. Everyone who listened in tonight and all the panelists, I think those were great presentations. I'm just navigating here on our website under membership, Bike Clubs, Club Leadership Webinars. This is where we have most of the past webinars archived. So if there's a topic that you think we may have covered before that might interest you, you can find these and watch them on your own time. This will be archived there by the end of the week. And Ryan, Steve, Joel, thank you so much for your time and your insights and sharing this. I hope everybody listening in found it very useful. I thank you, and the League thanks you for everything you're doing out there.
Thank everyone.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Good night, and thanks.